And welcome to NJCU's EdTech Doctoral Winter Webinar Series. My name is Melissa Wells. I'm a doctoral student in the Cohort 10 group of NJCU's EdTech Leadership Program. I'm also the graduate assistant for the department this year as well. So you're going to see my face in the beginning of these webinars as your host. So this evening, we are thrilled to have you all here today, and we're excited to share some valuable information with you from our doctoral students and also our fellow graduated doctorates that graduated from our NJCU EdTech Leadership Program. So this series is designed to provide you with the latest insights, strategies, and best practices in technology. So whether you're new to this field or you've been working in it for some time, we believe that you will find something of value here. So throughout this series, we will be covering a wide range of topics, and we will be featuring experts from technology educational fields who are going to share their experience and knowledge with you. And we're also going to be providing you with the opportunity to ask questions and interact with our speakers towards the end of their sessions. So please feel free to participate in the Q&A sessions. Also check to see you have two buttons on the bottom, one that says chat and then one that says Q&A. So you can put in your questions in either of those two chat boxes. So this evening, we are presenting Student-Centered Technology to Enhance Learning Environments, presented by Manny Algarin. Now, before I introduce you to Manny, again, if you have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. Manny will have time for questions at the end. Also, if you'd like to speak to him as well, you could just press the raise hand button and we will be gladly to unmute you. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Samantha Kozar real quick to speak about the programs in our EdTech department before I turn it over to Manny.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for everybody for carving out some time this evening to join us for the webinar. We're looking forward to a really engaging session, and I know everybody is in for a real treat. So thank you so much for joining us. So just to give a little bit about the programs with the Department of Educational Technology at NJCU, we have our ever popular doctoral program that is the Educational Technology Leadership Doctorate, which we have so many of you a part of with Melissa and Manny. And so if you're interested in our programs, it is a 3-year program. It is 2 years of coursework, 1 year dissertation, and we have you come in, and it is an online program, but you're there in the summer for what our program coordinator, Dr. Schamberg, likes to say is our hard fun. We have our very popular Master of Arts in Educational Technology programs, and we now offer those Master of Arts in Educational Technology with the STEM certificate, as well as the STEM certificate as a standalone 4-course certificate program that is 12 credits. If you are interested in any of our programs, please reach out to Dr. Laura Zieger, who is the chairperson of the Department of Educational Technology, and Melissa can put her contact information there for you, or myself for the STEM certificate, whether it is the graduate level certificate or it is the Master of Arts in Educational Technology. Please feel free to reach out to me, and Melissa, again, will provide that contact information for you. If you have any questions about anything you see here tonight, please make sure that you don't hesitate and you ask us anything. And I know Manny and Melissa will make sure that they get to your questions. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful session. Thank you.
Now, everyone, I'll post those links towards the end of the seminar, and also I will be posting Manny's bio as well, so you guys can read it. All right, so now without further ado, we will turn the time over to Manny.
Hi, thank you, Melissa, and thank you everyone for coming out this evening and sharing some time together as we dig into something that I've been studying a lot and becoming increasingly passionate with is the intersection of student-centeredness and a role it plays in technology-enhanced learning environments. And so today, there are 3 main objectives that we are going to work on together. So first, it's probably an unusual objective to start with START, with student-centeredness, but it's important, I think, to recognize that starting with student-centeredness is a key factor to effectively integrating technology and learning environments. Two, we're going to recognize the relationship between technology use and student-centeredness. And then lastly, we'll end with sharing some promising practices that you can continue to think about and implement in your classrooms or with your teams, or consider to implement even for next year when you're thinking about new technologies or next year goals. I think it's important to begin with checking in with yourself. And this is a strategy of checking in that I've got from Dr. Gholdy Muhammad, who is the author of Cultivating Genius. And it's about thinking and reflecting about how is your heart. And we come today, right now, to this moment with our lives surrounding us and a full day behind us and tomorrow ahead of us. And so I want us to take a moment and just be centered and get grounded. And feel free to also put in the chat a response to this question. How is your heart? All right. Thank you, Stephanie. And seems like we're good, full, and ready for new things. Exhausted. That's real. Yep. Definitely tired as well. And thank you for being here. Content, happy to be attending another great webinar. Awesome. Hey, Melissa. So we're going to continue to check in a way that allows us to be centered. And it's also modeling one of the strategies of student centering that Dr. Gholdy Muhammad talks about in her HILL framework, which we'll see. And it's about thinking and reflecting on a few questions that are aligned to what Dr. Gholdy Muhammad calls as pursuits. And so one is identity, like who or what do you look at for inspiration? Skills, what are some skills you need to reclaim your day? Intellect, what makes a lovely day? How has your day been lovely today? And we're going to listen to Bill Withers sort of on the backdrop for about 45 seconds to give you some time to pick one of these questions and respond to in the chat. Criticality also is another question where you can reflect on what do you do when your day feels defeated? And then joy. So how many times do you hear Bill Withers say lovely day in the song as a way to add a pop of joy? And I see even more responses in the chat. Thank you. So I'm going to play Bill Withers for about 40 seconds. Enjoy the music and also continue to use the chat as a way to respond to at least one of these questions. All right, thank you for engaging. And I see more responses coming in the chat. The song is now like, you know, it has that impact to create a smile. It's such a good song. And then thank you for being vulnerable also, everyone, to just share out how you're feeling and how today was. Seems like today we had a full day and we come here today, and I really appreciate that. So I want to share with you, we're going to go on a learning journey. And so as a metaphor, when you go on a journey, you make several pit stops along the way. And so right now we're going to focus on the first objective of starting with student-centeredness. And it's something that when thinking about effectively implementing technology didn't come up right away. It came up after thinking about how do we effectively use technology, realizing a problem that I noticed connected to that question, and then looking at the barriers related to it and realizing that in order for us to effectively integrate technology in our classrooms, that we have to start with student-centeredness. So in the chat, please share out what kind of technology do you use in your classrooms? What's an example of one that you might be using? Paper is a technology, .cam, printed lists, Google Classrooms, yep. Google Forms, Dojo, Actively Learn, Kahoot, Kami, yes. So this is, one of the ways in which I'm inviting everything that is in the learning community now to share out. And so you're probably sharing out one of these examples that I have here or another one. Promethean, Dojo, yes, iPad. And so the next question is our first stop in our learning journey is effective use of technology. And what we know about what it looks like to effectively integrate technology is that there are essential conditions for schools to implement technology. And there's implementation planning on a wide school-wide level. There's ensuring equitable access to technology and ensuring that instructors also are highly trained and are ready and prepared to support students too. So students have access to that quality of teaching with using technology, leads to prepared educators, skilled and sufficient tech support, high quality learning activities and content, and ongoing evaluation are some of the conditions that are provided by ISTE. And we also know that there are teachers that are recognized for being highly effective. And so you see curriculum associates, extraordinary educators. So they recognize every year teachers who use iReady and meet a certain criteria. Brain Pop educators can be certified as a Brain Pop educator and be recognized on a global scale around using Brain Pop. And then you see even IXL recognizing their teachers and IXL users with the title of Elite 100. So we know what the conditions are. We know what it looks like to effectively use in classrooms, and we even have a sense of effort. And so here you see a title describing how during the pandemic that New Jersey schools and the Department of Education have quote unquote bridged the digital divide. And by that, it means ensuring that all students have access to the technology. And so we're at our first pit stop on our journey. And so when it comes to effective use, there are three things that we know, right? We know that there's conditions for schools, there's examples for effective use with teachers, and then there's efforts to create equal access. Now, there's a problem that came up related to student-centeredness, and it has to do with disparities and unequal access to the extent to which teachers, staff members are prepared to teach with technology. And as a result, there's a digital use divide that is impacting students. We see how it impacts just even last year with this report highlighting that decisions were made around assigning below grade level work to students. And we even see that that some students were affected by this decision because of just assigning below grade level work. And so at the bottom, you see that these type of inequities to access to grade level work existed even before the pandemic. And so there are strategies and ways to ensure that we accelerate learning, but we're not implementing these strategies. And this is an example of a problem also, is how when technology is used very passively. And our goal is to shift and move more towards that active use where there's peer collaboration, students are designing global connection. And you'll see some of these examples that I'll share as connections to the student ISTE standards, sort of like their roles as tech users. And so our problem, there are a few things, right? Disparities exist. There's this digital use divide between passive and active use. and there's unequal access to teachers who effectively use. So why, right? What are the barriers? And so there's research done around the kind of challenges or barriers that get in the way. And according to this framework, there's first order, second order, or external or internal. And so I want to point your attention to the second order barriers of attitudes and beliefs and knowledge of skills of teachers. And so it leads us to think about, well, what's preventing effective use if it's attitude and beliefs? According to this model here, it's the perception of how useful technology is or how easy it is to use. It sort of changes the attitude towards using the technology for students. So there's a lot of decisions being made based off of attitudes, perceptions, and bias, whether we're conscious of it or unconscious of these attitudes when we're using technology. It also highlights how hard it is to shift. So Ademi Stembridge, who authored Culturally Responsive Education in the Classroom, talks about how hard it is to shift these attitudes. And he says that it's difficult emotional work. And it's instrumental. What we realize are these assumptions on which key beliefs hinge. It's not easy to move from a fixed to a growth mindset. And so what we're talking about is the shift away from teacher-centered coaching. I don't know if anyone in the group are instructional coaches or instructional leaders or aspiring to be instructional leaders. Or teachers, we sometimes even model teacher-centered coaching, and it perpetuates the idea of how to structure learning environments. So when our coaching as instructional leaders is more student-centered, our role is a certain way and our focus is a certain way so that students are impacted more. And this has direct connections to using technology in the classroom as well. And so the barriers have to do with teacher perceptions and attitudes, and the shift towards student-centeredness is not easy. Change is hard. And so these are the two things that are standing out as opportunities to help bridge that digital use divide. And so we just went on this really fast, above the speed limit learning journey, from effective use to a problem to what barriers exist. And now we're at a place to begin thinking about, well, what is student-centered learning? And so I know that there are highly skilled and highly knowledgeable people in our community right now. So in the chat, when you hear student-centered learning, what comes to mind? See some ideas coming in, students front and center, taking ownership of their learning. I love that language of ownership, giving students options on what they can read. So providing choice. And that's a really powerful way to build student agency. Students navigate through the content on their own and form their own conclusions. Really sets us up to be facilitators of learning. Students' freedom to react. Yeah, I feel like I think we would go down a huge rabbit hole with that one there. The influence of students' experiences and background knowledge on curriculum design. So now we're talking about like the fabric of learning and instructional design. Yes. And then we even have some philosophical ideas around schools are created to educate students. It's all about the students, helping them achieve a great education. Dr. Goldie Muhammad calls this like making it impossible for kids to fail, which I think is a really catchy way to think about it. So what's the relationship between student-centered and effective technology integration? So here is the definition around student-centered learning when enhancing learning environments with technology. Highlighted a few words to get us going with it that I want to draw attention to. So one is that it's a shift away from being passive receivers to active participants. Individual student needs and abilities are centered in the focus of learning and design for classroom instruction. Student-centered learning requires more than just an increase in technology implementation. So how often are we adding on more technology tools without really thinking about the needs or doing a needs assessment or evaluating? And it takes a shift. See, we even see the language of shift again. It's a shift in the educational culture towards a system that supports technology for standard-based learning and real-world problem solving. And it's a way for teachers to more effectively apply technology to improve learning. So we have some working definitions about student-centered learning. And here we see a lot of alignment to an approach to an educational model that centers students as well through culturally responsive education. And this definition comes from the New Jersey website, and it uses really similar synonymous language where it's about creating an inviting, welcoming sense of feeling of belonging for students. Is about acknowledging and inviting students' cultural backgrounds and their assets into the classroom, holding high expectations and having an asset-based mind, assuming that there's something that students are bringing into the classroom that we can invite. It's about building agency. These are a lot of the things that we said when we were putting it in the chat as well. And also on the bottom, cultural identities reflected in the curriculum, books, and materials. Geneva Gay provides a more practitioner's definition about culturally responsive pedagogy, which is the use of cultural knowledge, prior experience, frames of reference, and performance styles of ethnically diverse students to make learning encounters more relevant to and effective for them. So it teaches to and through the strengths of these students. So it validates and affirms their experiences. Dr. Goldie Muhammad talks about this more than just teaching skills. It's about teaching students to know and validate and celebrate who they are. And so Dr. Goldie Muhammad uses this word of genius, saying that our students, who are they? They're geniuses to start with. And what role does genius and joy play in improving how we educate students today? And so this framework provides a way to consider pursuits. What are we advancing in ways that actually support students more holistically? So there's identity, which affirms students and who they are and how they show up. Skills, which is what I feel like we're really familiar with, and designing lessons. Intellect, it's about transition. It's more of that higher order knowledge. So now we're moving more towards what students do with it. Criticality is about really interrogating and understanding equity and inequity. And then joy is how are students celebrating or advancing happiness as part of their learning experience. And when looking at the pursuits and also the aligned ISTE student standards, there's a lot of alignment around what that framework is saying as advancing for students and what the standards are for students according to the technology standards. Dr. Yemi Stembridge provides 6 themes around culturally responsive education. And so you'll see them there, and you'll see a lot of language being repeated, but you also see I want to bring attention to the word engagement, because our goal right now, big idea, is to see the relationship between student centeredness and technology integration. So when we look at engagement and consider a technology framework that also at the heart of it is champion student centeredness, we see active engagement as a characteristic of the learning environment when technology is being integrated. And so I zoomed in to that specific row so you can see almost a direct connection to a culturally responsive framework to a technology integration framework, or this one's called TIM, Technology Integration Matrix. If this framework is new to you, it's a very powerful tool to maybe self-assess where your technology integration is as a school implementation, and maybe where do you want to go next, and set some goals for your practice. And so now I want to talk about some promising practices that support centering students. And so one is empathy interviews. Anyone has in the chat tried any of these promising practices? Just put a little note in the chat with a little reflection, sharing out. Empathy interviews are awesome. You can use them for students. You can use them with staff. You can use it with families. It's a very powerful way to get an insight on the lived experiences of what is happening in your school, in your classroom. And so they can help identify issues that need to be figured out within your school system or within a certain type of technology use. And so underlined, a question for us or an idea to think about is, how can we use empathy interviews to understand student experiences with using technology in the classroom or at home? Have we ever surveyed students to see what they like about the tools? Is it actually helping them? What features help them best? What feels like a waste of time? How can they collaborate better? And so a question for you to think about is, how might you use empathy interviews to center student voices as part of the design of your instruction? And here's a protocols, like steps that sort of lay out the process. And so if you're going to do empathy interviews, it's something that you would probably consider doing over maybe a week or two time frame. And so first is to identify a challenge or a problem related to your technology use. Is it minutes on task? Is it performance related? Is it something else? Two, come up with questions that can better help you understand the user's experience. 3, select students or staff members or family members to interview. And you can choose as many people as you want, or you can select a group that's diverse and provide a set of unique answers around the problem. So shape an understanding around it. Step 4, interview. Step 5, you analyze data and you action plan. If you're realizing that the student voice and the student experience is giving you feedback on the instruction, it's a great way to be very user-centered. Another promising practice is a hexagon tool. This is an awesome tool to use for thinking about when you are implementing thinking about implementing a new technology into a program or something, or even a consultant to your school. Really helps the community know if what is being thought of as a new implementation program, does it really meet the school's needs? And so it's a process that takes time. It takes community organization in the school, and it is completely worth it for recognizing that student-centeredness is a key to effective technology use. And this is one way that you can use a tool to decide to implement a new technology or even audit existing technology in your classroom or in your school. And this is what it kind of looks like. And so I'm going to walk through some of the pieces here where there are, hexagons. So you have 6 sides. You have 6 sort of features or factors to consider. You would consider the needs, evidence, and evaluate based off the criteria that you have here. Is fitness, does it fit the community's values and culture and history? So there you see an intersection between the Hill framework that Dr. Goldie Muhammad talks about, usability, which is, we know, is a factor, is a barrier, right? Perceived use and ease of use. And so how usable is the program? Do they provide a lot of resources? Do they provide implementation resources? Do they provide too much? Capacity, is it at a point right now where the school can implement this? And what supports exist with the program or that the school can afford to take on? Another promising practice is student-centered coaching. And so if you're a coach, if you're thinking about instructional leadership, there's a way for you to recognize your practices as either student-centered, teacher-centered, and relationship-centered. And the more student-centered your coaching practices are, the higher impact you have. So the idea here is that use student-centered coaching with teachers around developing those skills and abilities related to technology integration. So you see 7 core practices here for student-centered coaching or supporting a teammate on your team, or even in PLCs can be a really powerful way to use this model. And so you use coaching cycles, you set standard-based learning goals, you unpack the goal, define learning targets, you co-plan with the teacher and define the evidence. And one of the things that I love about this student-centered coaching is that it's a shift away from modeling as a way to coach. And it really emphasizes co-planning and co-teaching. So at the heart of it has a very collaborative spirit. And then you measure the impact. And then there's partnership and administrative reflections, and so to ensure that there's continuous improvement over time. Another promising practice is to gamify your classroom instruction. And there are a lot of ways to gamify your instruction. And there are a lot of tools, cultural tools that can be used aligned to the frameworks that we talked about. And so I want to share with you one that is provides so many different resources. And Nearpod has this drag and drop kind of play activity. And so there you sort of like solve puzzles. You have Time to Climb, which is a vocabulary-based game, and it's a lot of fun. You have Draw It. And so you have students able to add images or text, draw backgrounds, and matching pairs. So you see here, there's a lot of ways within just one tool to meet a lot of different sort of learning preferences. Another way is to pair different technologies together. And this is a really interesting way to consider a blended learning model. So here are 4 ideas for using Nearpod and also Flowcabulary together. And so the big idea here is that when you're thinking about gamifying or integrating technology into the classroom to meet learning needs, you can pair different programs that will complement each other and serve student needs, and also use one promising practice as a way to support how to make it even more student-centered. So we've been on a bit of a learning journey together, and we started with thinking about how is technology effectively used, which kind of got us to a point where we realized there's a problem related to disparities and unequal access to quality instruction and integrate and technology enhanced learning environments. And the barriers are these deep-seated, rooted attitudes and beliefs that we have been trained to shape our traditional practices and teacher-centered teaching. And it leads us to recognize that any endeavor to sort of integrate technology into the classroom, we need to start with student-centeredness. And then we looked at some promising practices to help center our instruction or our school or our culture with different tools that we can apply in the classroom, school-wide, administratively, or even as an instructional leader too. And I just want to thank you. So that was our presentation today around student-centered technology to enhance learning environments. And I just want to thank you all for, after a long day like today, coming out and being actively engaged and hopefully taking away some ideas that you can implement and collaborate with partners at your school starting even tomorrow.
Okay, everyone. So again, if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat box or the Q&A. And if you'd like to talk to us, you could just press the raise hand button and we will unmute you. I put Manny's bio in the chat box, and I'm also going to put our information for our ed tech programs. And also this is being recorded today. So he gave us so much valuable information. So in case you want to go back to it, I'll also include our YouTube channel as well.
So I see a question in the chat around recommending any free gaming educational tools, like GameKit. It sounds like you know a few. Yeah, 100%. And I'll search through something that I could drop in the chat in a second. And I'll actually Melissa Garcia, who's also in the community, we both presented on gamified learning and game-based learning and gamification. And so I'm going to share one of those resources from that presentation to get us going with just some ideas that you can use. The goal is to make sure that it's meeting a student need.
Anybody else have any questions or want to talk? Just press the raise hand button.
This is what's just in case anyone's like more visual, wants to see this before clicking on it. This is what's in the chat. So this is awesome because it has some suggestions around different games that you can use. And I also just want to shout out Melissa Garcia for partnering with me on this as well. And so for each of these examples, you can see the game elements that are featured there. And so the idea is that certain game elements motivate students or get their attention or have like a certain intention. So you could be specific about which game element and game you want to use to support how motivated students can be in the learning, in your learning activities.
Mina, there's a presentation February, I believe 23rd on virtual reality. So we're finding that so many schools are pushing out for virtual reality, but it's also still so new. So we're learning so much every single day. And I'm excited about that.
There's a question around how do you know if it meets each student's need? It's a great question. There are a few ways. And so one of the things to understand about gamification and game-based learning is that's a mechanism to motivate students in the classroom. And so that's the lens to sort of think about. And so there's different like frameworks for motivation. And one of the frameworks, going back to our presentation that we focused on was the ARCS framework. And so let me see if I can find that. But essentially, the idea is that it helps you pinpoint specifically what part of the motivation you need to match with a learning tool. So for example, here you see the ARCS model, and it's an acronym for attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. And so is your issue with capturing their attention, like at the beginning, the do now, activating prior knowledge? Is it meeting their personal needs or goals? You can see how culturally relevant that is to or student-centered that can be. It might need to be. Is the text relevant to what they're experiencing? Do you need to do an empathy interview to understand what they might be more interested in? Do they feel like they're not successful? Is their confidence low? Then maybe it's a matter of how you're giving feedback to students. And then that's a power about like tokens are really powerful for that, or points. They help students see their learning. It's like a mechanism to see their progress as confidence building and satisfaction. Also, the rewards such as tokens is one way that games help feel good about what you're doing. I hope that helps.
Manny, this was such a great presentation because I feel like after COVID pandemic, when we were shut down and everything, when these students came back to the classroom, they really needed motivation, plus the teachers as well. So I just feel like it's still there, and little by little we keep improving all this motivation. So this great resources. Okay, so it looks like we've covered all of our questions. Manny, is there anything else you wanted to cover before a wrap up?
No, I guess the big idea and one of the takeaways is recognizing that to effectively implement technology in your classroom, however we use it, is to start with student centeredness and thinking about their cultural background, thinking about what their interests are, and using that as sort of resources to teach to and through the students.
Great. Okay, so some of you are also putting your email in the chat box and the Q's and A's as well. Don't worry, because I also have a couple of emails from the attendees from last time. We have all your emails when you register, so we're pushing out those certificates. So don't worry. All right, anything else, Manny?
Nothing else. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
All right, so great. Manny, thank you. And thank you, everyone. The NJCU EdTech department appreciates everyone being here. So again, please be sure to check out what else is going on in the EdTech department, for we always have so many events taking place. You can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Educational Technology Department at NJCU. And again, thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. And Manny, again, thank you so much for all of the informative information that you pushed out. And don't forget, guys, go to our YouTube channel, because if you want to look at this presentation over again, because there were so many resources that he used, his recording will be uploaded. Give it about maybe like 3 days. All right, everyone. So everyone have a great night. And again, Manny, thank you.